The 13 colonies have been acting like children, and now they need to be coerced, punished into doing as they are told. These are the Coercive Acts. That's what they're called in Great Britain, the Coercive Acts. We're going to coerce, we're going to convince our wayward colonies into behaving again. But in the 13 colonies themselves, they were not called the Coercive Acts. They were instead called the Intolerable Acts. And the Intolerable Acts were a series of punitive taxes. And if you see that little one right there, it says to go to the bottom of your page. And punitive means inflicting or intended as punishment. So these taxes, these laws, because an act is an act of parliament, it's a law. These laws are specifically designed to punish the 13 colonies. And they were passed throughout 1774. There's 5 of them. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. 5 of them. These laws were meant to punish the Massachusetts colonies for their defiance in the Boston Tea Party protest, which had been in reaction to changes in taxation by the British to the detriment, to the worsening of colonial goods. In Great Britain, these laws were referred to as the Coercive Acts. First, the British government, angered by the Boston Tea Party in 1773, passed the Boston Port Bill, closing Boston's harbor until restitution was made for the destroyed tea. Until you pay that $1 million you owe us for that tea, none of your ships are going to come or go in Boston Harbor. That harbor was the lifeblood of that city. You shut down that harbor and you're going to choke it to death. And that was the entire point. Pay up and say you're sorry. Or else. Second, the Massachusetts Government Act repealed the colony's charter of 1691, reducing it to the level of a crown colony. It's now a royal colony, and replaced the locally elected council with an appointive one, enhancing the powers of the military governor, General Thomas Gage, and forbidding town meetings without approval. Now you're not even allowed to gather up and talk about this. The Sons of Liberty can no longer gather up. Nobody can gather up. Those people you were so adamant should be the only ones to tax you, the guys you voted for, they don't have a job anymore. Now the governor, who also happens to be the military general in charge of the 2,000 soldiers camped out in the middle of your city of Boston, he gets to choose who's going to be on the council now. You don't get a vote anymore at all. Third, the Administration of Justice Act was aimed at protecting British officials charged with capital offenses during law enforcement by allowing them to go to England or another colony for trial. This was specifically about the Boston Massacre. The soldiers who participated in the Boston Massacre were put on trial in Boston. A future president of the United States, John Adams, is their lawyer. He believes so much in that everyone deserves a fair trial that John Adams defended them, and he won. They were found not guilty, and they were not punished by Massachusetts. But before that trial could come to an end, Great Britain was scared that they might be executed. So they came up with this part of the law, saying that, no, those soldiers, they were acting in accordance with the law. They were protecting the king's money. Therefore, you have to send them back to England, and they'll get a trial in England. You don't get to try them there, which made the people of Massachusetts extremely angry, especially since they found those soldiers not guilty. Fourth, new arrangements for housing British troops occupied American dwellings. thus reviving the indignation that surrounded the earlier Quartering Act, which had been allowed to expire in 1770. And that Quartering Act said that the local colonies, they had to pay for soldiers living there. Well, it hadn't kind of worked very well. The colonies had found too many ways to get around it. So we're going to have a brand new Quartering Act. Passed on June 2nd, 1774, the new Quartering Act applied to all of British America and gave the colonial governors, no longer the legislative bodies of the colonies, the governors, the colonial governors, most of them appointed by the king, they have the right to requisition, take unoccupied buildings to house British troops. However, in Massachusetts, the British troops were forced to remain camped on the Boston Common, the city square, until the following November because Boston patriots, Sons of Liberty, refused to allow workmen to repair the vacant buildings that General Gage had obtained for quarters. And fifth, the Quebec Act. This is a giant slap in the face. You remember, let's see, where would that be? I remember we have this somewhere. Yes. Do you remember the Treaty of Paris? All that land they gained? The Quebec Act gives this to Canada. Well, Canada today. Quebec at the time, which was a colony full of mostly French people and Catholics. The people in 13 colonies were primarily Protestant, aka not Catholic. So fifth, the Quebec Act, under consideration since 1773, removed all the territory and fur trade between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers from possible colonial jurisdiction and gave it to the province of Quebec. By establishing French civil law and the Roman Catholic religion in the coveted, desired area, Britain acted liberally, friendly towards Quebec settlers, but raised the specter of popery. Popery is the doctrines, practices, or ceremonies associated with the Pope or the papal system. It's Roman Catholicism. Before the mainly Protestant colonies to Canada's south. They gave away the brand new land. They gave it away to the French. Well, what was left of the French? The French lost the French and Indian War, did they not? So why are you giving them the land that we fought and died for in the French and Indian War? Or so that would be the colonies' perspective. Remember, Great Britain's perspective is, you couldn't behave, you couldn't just pay your taxes, so now we gotta bop you upside the back of the head. We gotta put a string through your nose and drag you kicking and streaming on to behave like the good little boys and girls you should be. Because Grandpappy Great Britain is sick and tired of you misbehaving. So behave.